welcome to the Walk-Through. Recently, I surveyed a group of about 35 students just asking what they wanted to hear about most. And you know what they told me? They wanted to know how to deal with the times in life when they felt like they had failed. And I remember times in my own life walking around on the campus of Texas A&M feeling like I had failed, that I had not lived the life that God had called me to live because of what I had done or where I was the night before. I wonder if that's where you're at right now. I wonder if you feel like you're in a moment of failure. Today, I want to walk you through how to respond to the times in life when you feel like you've failed. I think 4 things have to happen, and here they are. We have to agree with God about our sin. Number 2, we have to agree with God about His love. Number 3, we have to agree with God about our identity. And then last, we have to agree with God about our future. First, we have to agree with God about our sin. We have to begin to see our sin through the prescription lenses of God. We have to see our sin how He sees our sin. 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, God is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. That word confess, it's the Greek word homologeo, which literally means to say the same thing as someone else. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about coming to a place where you say, God, I agree with you about my sin. You look at what I've done, and my sin truly is, in the words of David in Psalm 51, it is evil in your sight. God, I'm not going to make excuses for what I've done. I'm not going to dumb it down. I'm not going to defend it or rationalize it. I'm not going to compare what I've done to what someone else has done to feel better about myself. God, what I did was significant enough that Jesus Christ had to go to the cross to take care of it. We have to agree with God about our sin. But number 2, we have to agree with God about His love. You know what the greatest lie is that we will believe when we feel like we have failed? Here it is. I am unlovable. That's the greatest lie that we can believe when we fail. I am no longer worthy of love. But Paul tells us in Romans chapter 8, verses 38 through 39, nothing can separate us from the love of God. My friends at 10th Avenue North, they sing a song called Times, and it's a song where God sings to His children, and here's what He says. He says, my love is over, it's underneath, it's inside, and it's in between. What does that mean? It means you can never out-sin the love and grace of God. Now, that doesn't give us an excuse to go out and sin. You know what it is? It's an invitation to run to God instead of from God when we find ourselves in moments of failure. The third thing that we have to do is we have to agree with God about our identity. We have to begin to realize that what we've done does not determine who we are. Last week, one of my sons was rude to me, and so I took him into my home office and I had him sit down and I said, I want you to sit here for the next 10 minutes to think about what you've done, because this is where rude kids sit. That was my wording to him, not my best parenting moment. And after he kind of served his time, do you want to know what he told me? He said, Dad, you said that I was a rude kid, but I'm not a rude kid. I was just being rude. And man, I loved that moment so much. You want to know why? Because it showed me that my son got it. That what he did in no way determined or defined who he was or is. Can we begin to believe that? That whatever's in your past, whatever you've done, does not determine who you are. If you know Jesus Christ, then you are a child of God. John 1:12, for as many as received Him, He gave them the right to be called children of God. Last, we have to agree with God about our future. You know what? Your relationship with that sin, it might need to change. You might need to agree with God about that. Paul says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 5, put to death, therefore, what is still earthly in you. My friends at Watermark Community Church talk about changing our playmates and our playgrounds. You might need to make some hard changes in your life to change that relationship with that sin. But never forget what Paul tells us in Philippians 1:6. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to the day of completion. You know what that means? It means God is not done with you. He still loves you. He still wants you. He still has good plans for you. And He wants to change the world through you. So if you find yourself in a season where you feel like you failed, here's how you respond. Number 1, you agree with God about your sin. Number 2, you agree with God about His love. Number 3, you agree with God about your identity. And number 4, you agree with God about your future.